Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. My name is Hannah Patton, and my presentation over phonology is over the French phonology. Just a quick intro to get started. The French phonetic alphabet consists of about 37 total phonemes. Depending on where you look or who you ask, there might be a few more or a few less. There are 12 vowels, 4 nasal vowels, 3 semivowels, and 18 consonants. Actually, it's one of the easiest European languages to learn, and it's definitely typically easier than English because there are specific rules for the tenses and genders, and there are only a few words that are irregular, unlike English or Spanish or a bunch of other languages. Moving on to vowels, consonants, and semivowels. In this chart, this is full of the different sounds and the phonetic alphabet that goes along with it, and then different words that demonstrate the sounds. Actually, in French, a lot of the sounds are very similar to those of English sounds. There are a few variations, and then there are a couple new sounds that we wouldn't be technically familiar with in English. Just to go over a few, K, L, and P and T are all very similar, but they're slightly different in French. So the K, if we were to say the word kilo in English, we have that breath after the K, whereas in French it would be more like kilo. It would be K-E-Y instead of the K with a breath. As for L, they don't elongate the L, so in the word love, they don't elongate it like that. Moving on to vowels, French actually has nasal and oral vowels, so that's not like English. So they have 4 or nasal vowels. When it's pronounced, the velum is slightly lowered so that air passes through both the oral and the nasal cavity. On the right, you can see the charts of the different vowels and whether they are oral or nasal. Going off of the nasal vowels, there are liaisons and nasality that goes into French phonology. So when there are nasal vowels, consonants are not pronounced when they follow a nasal vowel. So they are connected by liaisons, and it's taking the last letter of one word, which wouldn't normally be pronounced because in French they typically don't pronounce the last letter of the word, and they would link it to the next word. So since final consonants in French words are usually not pronounced, most of them end with a vowel sound. It can be kind of a sing-songy sound for foreigners when they listen to French speech. And I did a ton of research. I didn't necessarily see that there were quote-unquote allophones in French, but this is kind of their version of that, I think. So the S sound when in a liaison, for example, would sound like a Z. So it'd be des enfants. Here you can hear the nasal sound in on, the AN, which again, because of the nasal sound and because of the liaison, you combine des and enfant. Another example of this would be a D sounding like a T in a liaison. For example, mon grand ami means my great friend. Instead of mon grand ami, it's mon grand ami. Moving on to stress. As I mentioned before, French can sound like singing because there is less stress among the different sounds. as in English, we stress many different vowels and consonants throughout the words, and it really just depends on the word itself. There's also greater muscular tension in French, so the corners of your mouth and the muscles in your face move a lot more than in English. Along with that, if stress is placed on a word in French, it is typically placed on the final syllable of a word. For example, in English, melodramatic, the emphasis and the stress is on the MA right before the last syllable. In French, it's melodramatique. In the French language, the stress is on the last syllable. Another example would be authority. In English, the stress is on the THO in the middle of the word, whereas in French, autorité, the E at the end of the word is where the stress is. Just to reiterate some of the differences between English and French, French tends to have open syllables, which means, again, that they tend to end with a vowel, making it open. Even if it's a word like animation in English, we close it with that N, that consonant, but in French, it is animation, and we end that word with an O, making it open. Some other differences would be in the consonants. As I had said before, P is not as prominent as it is in English. L, again, not as drawn out as it is in English. And R tends to be a struggle for Anglophones to pronounce in French, making because it sounds more like a R than an R, like a hard R. Just a few fun basic rules and reminders. The final letter E is not typically pronounced in French. The cedilla is usually pronounced as an S, such as in garçon, laisson, façon. The letter H is never pronounced in French. As I said earlier, there are liaison rules when it comes to French, and this can be S and X are pronounced as a Z. This can be F pronounced as a V and D as a T. Also, final consonants are usually silent except for C, F, and L, which are generally pronounced as in English. Most plural French words, such as an S, however, the last S of the word is not pronounced. So yes, I hope you learned a few things about French and the phonology and phonetics that it encompasses, and I hope you have a great finals week.